Welcome back. We're picking up where we left off. We spent the last 4 deep dives walking through the entire text of the book of Job.
Right. We covered the ancient prologue. We examined the function of the heavenly adversary.
Yeah, and we navigated those exhausting dialogue cycles between Job and his friends.
We parsed Job's final, desperate oath of innocence. We analyzed the sudden, disruptive appearance of Elihu.
And we stood in the sweeping rhetoric of the divine speeches from the whirlwind. We finished with the epilogue.
We did, but today is fundamentally different. Today, we step back from the ancient text itself.
Exactly. We turn our attention to what Restoration Scripture has done with this book.
We examine what Latter-day Saint scholarship has done with it. We look at the long shadow Job casts over modern revelation.
We have been deliberately setting this material aside since our first session.
Right. Every time something with specific relevance to Latter-day Saint theology surfaced, we flagged it.
We noted the assembly of the sons of God at the heavenly council.
We noted the distinct premortal resonance in chapter 38.
We noted the explicit invocation of Job in Doctrine and Covenants, section 121.
And we promised we would return to all of it once we had established a firm grounding in the text itself.
This is that return. We are moving from the ancient Near East into the theological framework of the Restoration.
So we need to lay out our precise agenda for today.
Yes, here is our roadmap.
Yeah.
First, we will examine Max Sterling's peer-reviewed thesis.
He reads the final form of the Book of Job as a structural literary analog for the temple endowment.
Right. Second, we will explore Doctrine and Covenants, section 121.
We will place Joseph Smith in the winter of Liberty Jail.
We will map how his revelatory experience structurally mirrors Job's own descent.
And his divine encounter. Third, we will pull together the premortal council thread.
We will trace this from Job chapter 1 to Job chapter 38.
We will analyze it through both restoration cosmology and rigorous historical critical scholarship.
Finally, we will look at thematic resonances in the Book of Mormon.
Then we will close with a devotional reflection on the current Come Follow Me theme.
But before we move into that analytical framework, we must ground ourselves one last time in the narrative.
Yes, we need to recount the story. We need to remember the weight of the text we are analyzing.
Imagine a man living in the foreign land of Uz. His name is Job.
He is not an Israelite. He operates completely outside the covenant of Moses.
Yet he is blameless. He is upright. He fears God.
He turns away from evil, and he possesses immense wealth.
I mean, he has 7,000 sheep. He has 3,000 camels.
500 yoke of oxen, 500 donkeys.
He has a very large household. He is considered the prominent man of all the people of the East.
He also has 10 children, 7 sons, and 3 daughters.
And he is meticulous in his piety. His sons hold regular feasts.
Right, they invite their sisters. And when a cycle of feasting concludes, Job acts as a priest for his own family.
He rises early in the morning. He offers burnt offerings for each of his children.
Because he reasons that perhaps they have sinned. He worries they may have cursed God in their hearts.
He leaves nothing to chance. He is the exemplar of a well-ordered, righteous life.
He operates a flawless system of religious devotion.
Then the narrative perspective shifts abruptly.
We are transported into the heavenly court. The divine council is convening.
It operates with administrative formality. The beings identified as the sons of God come to present themselves.
They present themselves before the Lord, and among them is a figure identified by his title.
Right, the Hebrew term is ha-Satan, the adversary, the accuser.
This is a functionary within the heavenly court. The Lord initiates the dialogue.
He directs the adversary's attention to Job. The Lord holds Job up as the pinnacle of human righteousness.
The Lord points out that there is no one like him on the earth.
But the adversary pushes back immediately. He challenges the fundamental premise of Job's righteousness.
He asks a piercing question. Does Job fear God for nothing?
He argues that Job's righteousness is purely transactional.
Right. God has placed a hedge of protection around Job. God has blessed the work of his hands.
The adversary claims Job only obeys because obedience pays dividends. It is an economic arrangement.
So the adversary proposes a test. He suggests God stretch out his hand and strike everything Job has.
The adversary guarantees Job will curse God to his face.
And the Lord accepts the challenge. He places Job's possessions in the power of the adversary.
But he sets one strict boundary. The adversary must not stretch out his hand against Job's own person.
The scene returns to earth, and the devastation strikes with staggering speed.
It is absolute. A messenger arrives. He reports that Sabaeans have raided the oxen and donkeys.
They have put the servants to the sword.
The first messenger is still speaking when a second arrives.
He reports that the fire of God has fallen from heaven. It has burned up the sheep and the servants.
And that second messenger is still speaking when a third arrives.
Chaldeans formed 3 columns. They raided the camels. They struck down the servants.
The third is still speaking when the fourth arrives. This is the crushing blow.
Job's children were feasting in their oldest brother's house.
A great wind swept in from the desert. It struck the 4 corners of the house.
The house collapsed. All 10 children are dead.
Job loses his property. He loses his livelihood. He loses his entire posterity.
It all happens in a single afternoon.
Job's reaction defies the adversary's prediction. He stands up. He tears his robe.
He shaves his head. These are ancient rites of mourning.
Then he falls to the ground.
He worships.
He says naked he came from his mother's womb. He says naked he will return.
The Lord gave. The Lord has taken away. He blesses the name of the Lord.
In all this, Job does not sin. He does not charge God with wrongdoing.
The first test concludes. Job maintains his integrity.
The transactional theology of the adversary is proven false.
So the heavenly council convenes a second time?
The sons of God present themselves. The adversary is among them again.
The Lord points out Job's retained integrity.
The Lord notes that the adversary incited him against Job to ruin him without cause. The adversary pivots. He argues that physical pain is the true metric of devotion.
Skin for skin. A man will give all he has for his own life.
The adversary challenges God to strike Job's bone and flesh.
He guarantees Job will curse God.
The Lord grants permission for this second phase of testing.
He sets a new boundary. The adversary must spare Job's life.
The adversary departs. He afflicts Job with loathsome sores.
They cover him from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head.
Job's physical suffering is intense. The social alienation is worse.
He takes a piece of broken pottery. He uses it to scrape himself.
He leaves the community. He descends to the ash heap.
He sits among the refuse outside the city gates. He is utterly isolated.
He is rendered unclean. This is the moment his wife speaks.
She asks if he still holds fast his integrity. She tells him to curse God and die.
Job rejects her counsel. He calls it foolish.
He asks if they should receive good from God and not receive evil. He maintains his stance.
Then his 3 friends arrive. Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, Zophar the Naamathite.
They have heard of his adversity. They travel to show him sympathy. They want to comfort him.
They approach from a distance. They do not even recognize the ruined figure on the ash heap.
They raise their voices. They weep. They tear their robes.
They throw dust on their heads toward heaven. They sit with him on the ground.
They sit for 7 days and 7 nights. They do not speak a word to him.
They see that his suffering is very great. It's a profound act of silent mourning.
But eventually the silence breaks. Job speaks.
He unleashes a torrent of grief. He curses the day of his birth.
He longs for the oblivion of the grave.
That raw outpouring triggers the friends. They cannot process his despair.
They are deeply committed to a rigid theology. They believe in strict retributive justice.
Their theology is a closed mechanical system. Prosperity is the inevitable result of righteousness.
Suffering is the inevitable result of sin. God is perfectly just.
Therefore, the system is perfectly calibrated.
Right. If a person suffers intensely, they must have sinned intensely. It is a simple mathematical equation for them.
The friends transition rapidly from comforters to interrogators.
They apply the oppressive weight of their theological assumptions onto Job.
Eliphaz argues from mystical revelation and age-old wisdom.
Bildad argues from tradition and the authority of the ancients.
Zophar argues from sheer dogmatic certainty.
They demand Job confess his hidden sins. They demand he repent.
They assure him that if he humbles himself, God will restore his fortunes.
They cannot accept a universe where the innocent suffer disproportionately. It threatens their own sense of safety.
Job's desperation escalates through 3 exhausting cycles of debate.
He knows his own innocence. He refuses to concede to their false theology.
He knows he has not committed crimes worthy of this devastation.
He moves from mourning his fate to issuing a raw, direct complaint.
He stops merely defending himself to his friends. He turns his face upward.
He demands an audience with God. He frames his demand in legal terms.
He wants a trial. He wants a subpoena. He wants a formal hearing.
He insists on his integrity. He is willing to accuse God of cosmic mismanagement to defend his own innocence.
Finally, the climax arrives. The voice speaks from the whirlwind.
God answers Job, but God does not answer the specific legal charge.
God does not explain the heavenly wager. God does not validate the retributive theology of the friends.
Instead, God reframes the entire architecture of the universe.
God takes Job on a sweeping tour of the cosmos. He points to the foundation of the earth.
He points to the boundaries of the sea. He points to the constellations.
He points to the wild, chaotic beasts. He describes the ostrich, the horse, behemoth, and Leviathan.
God shows Job a universe that is vastly larger than a simple system of human retribution.
It is more complex. It is more terrifyingly beautiful.
It is not a universe built solely around human morality. It is a universe of wildness and untamable forces.
Job is overwhelmed by the sheer scale of divine wisdom. He withdraws his legal case.
He repents in dust and ashes. He finds peace in the presence of God, even without receiving a logical explanation for his suffering.
That narrative constitutes the text we have spent our previous sessions analyzing.
We focused strictly on the ancient context. We looked at the Hebrew vocabulary.
We examined what historical critical scholars deduce about the ancient author's compositional intent.
We explored the distinct editorial layers. We situated the poetry firmly within the ancient Near Eastern wisdom tradition.
We treated the text on its own ancient terms, but today moves in a completely different direction.
We are asking a different set of questions. We are asking what later readers have done with the text they inherited.
We are looking at readers who operate from the vantage point of later revelation.
We are focusing specifically on restoration theology. We are examining how Latter-day Saints engage this ancient book.
We must be perfectly clear about our standard of evidence for this discussion.
Yes, we are not evaluating ancient compositional intent today. We are not arguing that the ancient Israelite author possessed a modern Latter-day Saint theological framework.
That is not the claim. Such a claim would be historically irresponsible.
We are evaluating how symbolic, typological readings illuminate the text.
We're exploring how restoration theology engages ancient scripture. This is a separate and entirely valid form of inquiry.
It asks what the final form of the text yields when read through the specific lens of modern revelation.
Let us begin with our first major topic. We are looking at Max Sterling's temple reading of Job.
Sterling published a highly detailed, peer-reviewed article in the journal Interpreter.
He advances a specific structural claim.
He argues that the final canonical form of the Book of Job functions as a literary analog to the temple endowment.
He suggests the text mirrors the progressive stages of temple initiation.
It is a massive structural proposition. Sterling argues the book is organized as a complex chiasmus.
A chiasmus is a well-documented ancient literary structure.
It organizes themes and narrative events symmetrically. It builds inward toward a central turning point.
And then it moves outward in reverse order. It resembles the shape of an arrow pointing to a specific center.
Sterling maps this exact chiastic structure onto the sequential movement of temple ordinance work.
He does not read Job as a loose collection of poems.
He reads it as a highly structured, deliberate, literary ascent.
So the narrative movement of the story mirrors a ritual movement.
It maps onto a specific journey. It begins in a fallen world.
It moves through stages of intense testing.
It involves receiving instruction from various messengers.
And it culminates in a direct progression toward the divine presence.
We need to explain how this actually works in the text. We need to understand how Sterling maps these specific chapters to these specific ritual concepts.
Sterling breaks the text down systematically. He views the prologue in chapters 1 and 2 as the initiation of the mortal probation.
Job is cast out of his initial state of comfort. He is subjected to the harsh realities of a fallen world.
The long dialogue cycles with the three friends represent the testing of the individual.
Right, in what Latter-day Saints might call a telestial or terrestrial state.
The friends function as false messengers. They offer flawed instruction based on the philosophies of men.
They try to convince Job to accept a lesser theological truth.
Job rejects their flawed instruction. He holds fast his integrity.
He refuses to compromise his known truth.
This brings us to a fascinating element of Sterling's reading. We need to look at his treatment of specific characters.
Let us look at Elihu. In our previous sessions, we spent significant time on the historical critical debate surrounding Elihu.
Scholars broadly agree Elihu was not part of the original poem. His speeches in chapters 32 through 37 disrupt the flow.
His Hebrew vocabulary is different. He is a later editorial insertion.
Sterling's framework bypasses that compositional debate entirely.
He is not concerned with when Elihu was added. He is solely concerned with Elihu's narrative function in the final received text.
Sterling reads Elihu narratively as a proxy for the adversary.
Elihu functions as Satan's final challenge to the initiate. He is a testing figure.
He appears at a highly specific, critical juncture in the structure.
He speaks right before the climax. He speaks right before the voice from the whirlwind.
He speaks right before Job passes into the divine presence.
In Sterling's reading, Elihu represents a final, sophisticated obstacle. He is a deceptive voice.
He attempts to derail Job just before the veil parts. Elihu claims to speak for God.
He claims to have perfect knowledge, but his ultimate goal is to force Job to submit to a false premise of guilt.
That narrative interpretation gives Elihu a profound theological function.
It makes his placement in the text essential regardless of his compositional history. He acts as the final sentinel of opposition.
Sterling does something similarly complex with the character of Job's wife.
We traditionally read her as a brief cautionary tale. She has exactly one line in chapter 2.
She tells Job to curse God and die.
Most commentators dismiss her immediately. They treat her merely as a failure of faith.
They view her as someone who broke under the pressure.
But Sterling views her through a distinct restoration lens. He sees her as a narrative parallel to Eve.
He notes a critical detail. She is the only other human present at this initial moment of direct testing.
Her instruction to Job is not just a failure of endurance. It is a decisive narrative provocation.
Her words force a crucial choice upon Job. Her statement drives the narrative forward.
It moves the story out of a state of static, passive suffering. It pushes it into the realm of active theological testing.
The Hebrew word she uses is central here. The word is barek.
It literally means to bless. It is used euphemistically in the text to mean curse.
So she says, bless God and die. It carries an inherent duality.
This duality echoes how Latter-day Saint theology views Eve's choice in the Garden of Eden.
Eve's choice initiated mortality. It initiated the formal state of probation.
Sterling suggests Job's wife serves a structurally similar function. She initiates the theological trial.
Her provocation forces Job to engage the problem of suffering actively,
rather than just enduring it silently on the ash heap.
I want to pause on this methodology for a moment. I can hear some of our listeners raising an analytical concern.
How do we distinguish between discovering a genuine structural resonance in a text and simply projecting our own later theological framework onto it?
Right, Sterling's reading is remarkably coherent internally, but it absolutely requires reading the ancient text backward.
We are taking the modern temple endowment and using it as a decoder ring for ancient Near Eastern wisdom literature.
Is there a danger of overriding the original voice of the text?
That is the essential critical question. It is the inherent tension in all typological reading.
Does the text naturally yield this temple structure, or are we forcing it into a predetermined mold?
The scholarly value of Sterling's reading does not lie in proving ancient intentionality.
It is highly unlikely the ancient author envisioned the Nauvoo temple endowment.
The value lies in demonstrating how Latter-day Saints read Scripture symbolically.
It shows how we find deep, resonant patterns that align with revealed theology.
It proves the text itself is robust. It is complex enough to sustain this kind of intricate symbolic mapping.
It enriches the devotional life of the modern reader.
It does this even if the ancient author did not explicitly design it as a formal temple liturgy.
It shows that the themes of testing, false instruction, holding to integrity, and passing into the divine presence are universal spiritual archetypes.
They are deeply embedded in the scriptural tradition.
We should note, for accuracy, that Sterling's reading remains a minority position among Latter-day Saint biblical scholars.
It is a highly substantive piece of work. It is thoroughly argued.
But it is not the consensus historical view of the text. It represents one deeply compelling way to engage the canonical form of the book.
We can now transition from this specific literary argument to a concrete historical moment.
We move to a moment where temple themes and the book of Job explicitly collide in real time.
We turn now to our second major topic. We look at Doctrine and Covenants, section 121.
We look at Joseph Smith and Liberty Jail. We are shifting from academic literary analysis to raw, lived historical experience.
We have a direct, undeniable textual anchor here. It is found in Doctrine and Covenants, section 121, verse 10.
The Lord is speaking directly to Joseph Smith in his confinement. The Lord says, "Thou art not yet as Job."
We must firmly establish the historical context. The context is grim.
It is the winter of 1838 to 1839.
The Mormon War in Missouri has reached its devastating conclusion.
The extermination order has been issued by Governor Boggs.
The massacre at Hans Mill has occurred.
Joseph Smith and other leaders were betrayed at Far West, They were subjected to a mock court-martial.
They were nearly executed. They have been transferred to Liberty Jail to await trial.
Liberty Jail is a misnomer. It is a dungeon.
It is a two-story stone structure, but the prisoners are kept in the lower level.
The ceiling is so low a tall man cannot stand upright. The walls are 4 feet thick.
The winter cold seeps through the stone. The light is minimal.
The food is repulsive. They often suspect it is human flesh.
Joseph is completely isolated from the main body of the saints.
He receives sporadic, agonizing reports of their suffering.
They're being driven across the Mississippi River in the dead of winter.
He is physically deteriorating. He is psychologically tormented by his inability to protect his people.
He is uncertain if he will ever leave the jail alive.
Out of that absolute darkness, Joseph dictates a letter.
Sections 121, 122, and 123 are excerpts from this lengthy epistle.
Section 121 opens with a cry of profound anguish.
O God, where art thou? And where is the pavilion that covereth thy hiding place?
This is not a polite, formal prayer. This is not a measured petition.
This is a raw, desperate demand for divine presence. It is a cry of abandonment.
And this connects directly back to the structural movement we saw in the book of Job.
We noted a significant rhetorical shift in Job's speeches starting in chapter 7.
In the early chapters, Job talks about God in the third person. He discusses God's attributes with his friends.
But in chapter 7, the grammar changes. Job turns away from the friends.
He starts talking directly to God in the second person. He addresses God as thou.
Joseph's cry in Liberty Jail perfectly mirrors Job's linguistic shift.
Both men hit a threshold of suffering, where theological debate loses all meaning.
They no longer care about the abstract attributes of God.
They need direct contact with the sovereign God who is permitting their suffering.
They demand an accounting. They demand presence.
There is an independent line of Latter-day Saints scholarship that we must introduce here.
Scholars publishing in BYU studies have done significant work on the Liberty Jail letters.
They treat Liberty Jail and the resulting revelations as a specific theological incubator.
They call it a seedbed for eternal temple blessings.
They trace how the doctrinal concepts received in that dungeon laid the necessary conceptual groundwork for the temple covenants introduced just a few years later in Nauvoo.
It is a remarkable historical convergence.
The themes that emerge in section 121 are central to temple theology.
The revelation discusses the precise nature and rights of the priesthood.
It discusses power, it discusses patience, it discusses long-suffering.
It introduces the profound concept of consecrated affliction.
Sterling arrived at a temple reading of Job through the literary analysis of ancient poetry.
These historians arrive at a temple reading of Joseph's suffering through the analysis of 19th century documentary evidence.
Let us examine the specific phrase the Lord uses in the Revelation. Thou art not yet as Job.
We must read this carefully. It is comparative. It is not equating their suffering.
It does not diminish Joseph's pain. It treats Job as a maximal benchmark of human extremity.
The Lord acknowledges the absolute depth of Joseph's current agony.
But he points to a scriptural precedent that extends even deeper into the abyss.
This specific reference reveals something crucial about Joseph Smith's own scriptural memory.
The book of Job was an active, vibrant part of his consciousness.
The Lord did not need to explain who Job was. The revelation did not pause to summarize the plot of the ancient text.
The reference landed immediately. It carried its full weight instantly.
In Joseph's moment of absolute deepest crisis, the story of an ancient man on an ash heap provided the necessary vocabulary for his own suffering.
Look closely at the structural parallel between the two texts.
Doctrine and Covenants 121 moves through a highly distinct sequence.
It begins with raw, unvarnished complaint. O God, where art thou?
It then moves into a period of detailed instruction.
The Lord explains how the powers of heaven operate.
The Lord explains how the priesthood cannot be controlled by unrighteous dominion.
The sequence concludes with sweeping promises of consecrated affliction.
The Lord promises that all these things shall give him experience and shall be for his good.
Now lay that modern sequence over the ancient structure of Job.
The book of Job begins with raw complaint. Chapters 3 through 31 are an extended outpouring of grief.
And a demand for cosmic justice. Then the text moves into instruction.
We have Elihu attempting to explain the disciplinary and refining nature of suffering.
Finally, we have the climax. We have the voice from the whirlwind. We have the divine reframing of the universe.
The structural shape is undeniably similar. Complaint, followed by instruction, followed by divine reframing.
This recurring structural parallel raises a vital question about how revelation actually operates in moments of human extremity.
It forces us to ask what we are really observing. Are we looking at literary borrowing, or are we looking at something deeper?
Let me offer an analogy to clarify this. Think of reading two different maps of the exact same mountain.
These maps are drawn by two different cartographers. They are separated by thousands of years.
They use completely different symbols and languages, but the contours of the mountain are the same.
Are Joseph Smith and the ancient author of Job simply following a shared literary convention?
Or does the raw human encounter with divine sovereignty simply follow a universal structural shape when a human soul is pushed to its absolute limit?
Does the soul in agony always chart the same basic path up the mountain?
That is a profound way to frame the question.
It is highly probable that this structure is not just a literary invention. It is the inherent architecture of deep spiritual crisis.
You experience the trauma. You complain to the heavens.
You grapple with inadequate human instruction and the philosophies of men.
And finally, you encounter a divine reality that wholly transcends your initial complaint.
This parallel suggests that the Book of Job is not just an ancient artifact to be studied.
It serves as an accurate map of a terrifying spiritual terrain.
It is a terrain that Joseph Smith had to personally navigate in that dungeon.
This realization naturally shifts our focus to the underlying cosmic architecture that frames both Joseph Smith's expansive theology and Job's ancient story.
Let us transition to our third major topic. We are going to trace the premortal council thread.
We are looking at specific texts in the book of Job, moving from chapter 1 to chapter 38.
We need to isolate and examine two specific verses. The first is the inciting incident of the entire book.
It is Job chapter 1, verse 6. The text reads, "Now there's a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them."
The second verse occurs at the climax of the book. It is Job chapter 38, verse 7.
The Lord is speaking from the whirlwind. He is describing the foundation of the earth.
He asks Job where he was when the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy.
To understand the weight of these verses, we must contrast how they are read in broader Christian tradition versus how they are read in specific Latter-day Saint cosmology.
In general Christian interpretation, the phrase sons of God, or Ben Elohim in Hebrew, is usually understood as referring to generic angelic attendants.
They are heavenly beings. They form a divine retinue around the throne.
But broader theology assigns little specific weight to their exact nature, their origin, or their relationship to humanity.
Latter-day Saint cosmology brings a highly specific, literal framework to these verses.
The phrase sons of God is understood literally. These beings are spirit sons and daughters.
They constitute the premortal human family.
When Restoration theology reads the heavenly council scene in Job 1, it reads it as a reflection of the grand council in heaven.
This council involves a detailed plan of salvation. It necessitates human agency.
And crucially, it involves a specific historical rebellion by a prominent figure who sought to destroy that agency.
Let us bring in the work of biblical scholar Peggy Day. We referenced her research earlier in our series on the prologue.
She offers a rigorous historical critical reading of the adversary figure in Job chapter 1.
We noted earlier that the Hebrew term is ha-Satan. It translates as the adversary or the accuser.
It is a title with a definite article. It is not a proper name.
Peggy Day reads this figure contextually within ancient Near Eastern court motifs.
She argues the adversary is a bounded functionary in the divine court. He is an official.
He is performing a required systemic job. He acts as a prosecuting attorney.
He travels the earth to test the loyalty of God's subjects. He is not the cosmic embodiment of all evil.
What is genuinely fascinating here is the unexpected alignment between critical biblical scholarship and Restoration theology.
Peggy Day's secular, historical, critical reading of the ancient Hebrew text actually aligns much closer with Latter-day Saint theology than it does with later post-biblical Christian dualism.
In later Christian thought, the figure of Satan often evolves into an autonomous, co-equal rival to God.
He becomes an independent cosmic force, fighting a massive, unresolved war for control of the universe.
But in Restoration thought, Satan remains strictly bounded by God's absolute sovereignty.
He operates within tight, designated limits.
The narrative of Job portrays exactly this dynamic. The Lord sets the boundary for the first test.
Upon himself put not forth thine hand.
The Lord sets the boundary for the second test. He is in on hand, but save his life.
The adversary can only operate within the precise parameters allowed by the sovereign God.
He is a subordinate figure. He is a rebel, certainly. He is a destroyer.
But he is fundamentally contained within the broader architecture of the divine plan.
Now let us dwell on the implications of Job chapter 38, verse 7.
This is a staggering verse when viewed through the lens of the restoration.
The sons of God are shouting for joy at the foundation of the world.
In traditional commentary, this is simply poetic imagery of angels praising God's architectural majesty.
But in Latter-day Saint theology, this implies direct, personal participation in the event.
It implies that we were present in that council.
I want you to think about what that means for your life right now.
When you are sitting on your own personal ash heap, Latter-day Saint theology suggests something profound.
It suggests you were one of the sons or daughters of God shouting for joy.
You rejoiced over the presentation of the very plan that would subject you to the exact kind of mortal testing Job endured.
You understood the necessity of the physical world. You understood the structural necessity of opposition.
You accepted the risk of the ash heap.
You accepted it because you understood the eternal potential of the exaltation it could forge.
This theological context radically alters the emotional resonance of the whirlwind speech.
When God asked Job, "Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth?"
The primary rhetorical impact in the ancient text is to emphasize Job's human ignorance.
It emphasizes his insignificance. Job was not there. Job knows nothing of how the cosmos operates.
Therefore, Job has no right to question the Creator.
Wait, I want to pause on that for a second. I can hear some of our listeners getting nervous about how far we are taking this.
We know the book of Job is an ancient Near Eastern wisdom text. It does not explicitly narrate the book of Abraham's Grand Council.
It does not map out the three estates of man. It does not define agency in modern theological terms.
Are we in danger of just projecting our modern Latter-day Saint theology backward onto an ancient author who wouldn't recognize it at all?
Where is the exact boundary line here?
That is the essential critical boundary we must maintain.
We must explicitly acknowledge that the ancient Israelite author did not possess the Book of Abraham.
The ancient author was utilizing existing ancient Near Eastern mythological motifs.
He was using the well-known motif of a divine council to frame a complex wisdom dialogue about the nature of human suffering.
The boundary is this. The ancient text provides a minimal, suggestive framework.
It provides the image of a heavenly court. It provides the concept of bounded adversarial testing.
It provides the imagery of joyous participation at creation.
Later modern revelation takes that minimal framework and expands it into a comprehensive, literal cosmology.
We should not claim the ancient text says more than it actually says.
But we can absolutely observe how perfectly its minimal framework accommodates the expansive truths of the restoration.
The ancient text provides the scaffolding. Modern revelation builds the theological house around it.
Let us trace how this specific concept of a premortal plan involving necessary and structured mortal testing connects directly to the foundational theology of another text.
We move to our fourth major topic. We are looking at Book of Mormon resonances.
We must clearly flag this section as theological synthesis. We are not discussing settled historical scholarship here.
We are not arguing for direct textual borrowing.
We are not suggesting that Nephi or Alma were sitting at a desk actively reading the book of Job and quoting it in their sermons.
We are exploring deep structural thematic resonance.
We are looking at how two entirely independent scriptural traditions grapple with identical, profound theological problems.
Let us compare Job's overarching narrative to Lehi's dream as recorded in 1 Nephi chapter 8.
The visual and narrative parallels are immediately compelling. In both texts, you have a central, righteous figure.
This figure is thrust into movement through deep uncertainty. He experiences a profound sense of isolation and abandonment.
Job sits alone on the ash heap in the ruins of his life.
Lehi wanders in a dark and dreary waste for the space of many hours, crying unto the Lord for mercy.
Both figures are systematically stripped of their usual orienting markers. They are left in the dark.
They are left relying solely on their internal integrity, and both eventually arrive at a transformative divine vision.
For Lehi, it is the vision of the tree of life. The fruit is desirable to make one happy. It represents the love of God.
For Job, it is the voice speaking from the whirlwind. The voice reveals the awe-inspiring, untamable complexity of the physical creation.
Crucially, in both scriptural accounts, the divine vision transforms their understanding of reality without erasing the preceding trauma.
The vision does not fix the past. Lehi still has to stand by and watch his sons Laman and Lemuel refuse to partake of the fruit.
The family fracture remains real. Job still has to live with the memory of the 10 graves of his children.
The whirlwind does not resurrect them. The vision does not undo the pain.
It provides a new, expansive context for enduring the present.
There is an even deeper thematic resonance between these texts. It centers on the dismantling of retributive theology.
This was the core intellectual conflict of the dialogue cycles in Job.
Job's three friends believed absolutely in a mechanical system of justice.
They believed prosperity equals righteousness and suffering equals sin.
They simply could not compute the concept of innocent suffering. It broke their theological model.
The Nephite civilization frequently falls into this exact same theological trap.
It is a recurring cyclical problem documented throughout the Book of Mormon narrative.
We see it clearly in the Book of Helaman. The people become righteous. They prosper economically.
They assume their economic prosperity is divine proof of their elite spiritual status.
They become proud. They begin to oppress the poor. They are eventually humbled through war or famine.
The Book of Mormon narrative repeatedly complicates and forcefully dismantles the simplistic prosperity gospel.
It shows how dangerous that theology becomes when weaponized by a society.
This brings us to the profound theological contribution of Alma the Younger.
Alma's teaching in 2 Nephi chapter 2 provides a specific, rigorous doctrinal framework.
It addresses the exact core problem that animates the Book of Job.
We are talking about his discourse on the necessity of opposition in all things.
Alma teaches this specific doctrine to his son Corianton later in his life, but the foundational principle originates with Lehi and is expanded by Alma throughout his public ministry.
Alma is dealing with a severe crisis of justice. His son Corianton is deeply worried about the justice of God in punishing the sinner.
Corianton thinks punishment is unfair. Job's friends were worried about the justice of God in punishing the supposedly innocent.
Both are fundamentally wrestling with how God's perfect justice maps onto the messy reality of human suffering.
Alma's teaching functions as a direct, systematic theological answer to the problem Job's friends could not solve.
Job's friends tried to explain human suffering as an anomaly.
They believed that if someone suffers, the system broke. Or, more likely, the person broke the system through hidden, secret sin.
The friends required a granular, case-by-case explanation for every instance of suffering to maintain their worldview.
But Alma argues something radically different. Alma argues that opposition is structurally necessary to the plan of salvation.
It is not an anomaly. It is not a glitch in the system. It is the engine of mortality.
Let me try an analogy here to make this concrete. Think about the mechanics of aerodynamics. Think about how an airplane flies.
An airplane requires the friction and resistance of drag in order to generate lift.
Without the resistance of the air pushing against the wings, the plane cannot leave the ground.
Alma is arguing that human progression requires the friction of suffering.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it. Alma states it explicitly.
It must needs be that there is an opposition in all things. If not so, righteousness could not be brought to pass, neither wickedness, neither holiness nor misery, neither good nor bad.
Without opposition, existence is just a compound in one. It is static.
It has no life, it has no death, it has no progression, it is dead.
When we read Job's desperate insistence on finding meaning through the lens of the premortal council, and we combine it with Alma's theology of opposition, a powerful new synthesis emerges.
Adversity was understood from the very beginning of the premortal council as a core feature of the design.
It was not a failure of the design. Job intuitively knows his suffering must have meaning, even if he knows it is not punitive.
Alma provides the exact doctrinal articulation of that meaning. Suffering creates the necessary friction for agency to operate.
Again, we must interject with scholarly caution here. We are weaving these texts together thematically.
But Job is an ancient Near Eastern wisdom text. It is dealing with specific historical debates regarding wisdom theology in his own ancient milieu.
The Book of Mormon is addressing an entirely different historical context.
How do we hold these texts in rigorous conversation without flattening their distinct independent voices?
We don't want to turn them into one homogeneous, generic theology.
That is always the danger of harmonization. If we force ancient texts to say the exact same thing in the exact same vocabulary, we lose their distinct power.
We hold them in conversation by respecting their different functions. Job poses the raw, unanswerable question from the very depths of human experience.
It demands that God account for the reality of disproportionate, crushing suffering.
The Book of Mormon, particularly the teachings of Alma, provides a systematic theological framework.
It contextualizes that suffering within a cosmic plan.
Job is the raw data of human agony. Alma provides the theoretical physics that explains the forces at work behind the agony.
They do not cancel each other out. They desperately require each other.
Theology without the raw experience of Job becomes sterile. The raw experience of Job without the theology of Alma leads to despair.
So, Alma provides a profound theological answer to Job's raw question. He explains the precise mechanics of opposition.
But theology, no matter how systematic, only gets us so far. Eventually, you have to actually live the theology.
You have to sit on the ash heap yourself. We must move now to our final thoughts.
We turn to a devotional reflection. We bring the arc of our study to a close.
We want to center this reflection on the current Come Follow Me theme. The theme is a direct quotation.
Yet will I trust in him. It is drawn from Job's defiant declaration in chapter 13, verse 15.
Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him, but I will maintain mine own ways before him.
We need to rigorously define what the word trust actually meant for Job in that moment.
It is very easy for us to use the word trust lightly in our religious vocabulary.
But Job's trust did not mean getting a logical explanation for his pain. Job never learns about the heavenly wager.
God never speaks in the whirlwind and says, "Listen, Job, the adversary challenged me, and I had to prove a point to the divine council."
Job is left completely in the dark regarding the inciting incident of his own tragedy. He never gets the backstory.
The whirlwind provides radical reorientation. It does not provide a granular accounting of his suffering.
God shows Job the vast, incomprehensible scale of the universe. He shows him the wildness of Leviathan.
God essentially says, the universe is far more complex than your limited theology allows.
Can you trust the Creator who manages all of this complexity, even if you cannot understand your specific painful coordinate within it?
This highlights the unique restoration vantage point. Job wasn't at the creation. God reminds him of that forcefully. Where wast thou?
But Latter-day Saint doctrine teaches that we were. The trust Job reaches for in the dark is profound.
But the trust a Latter-day Saint reaches for is subtly different. It is trust in a Father whose plan we ourselves once celebrated.
We shouted for joy at the prospect of this very design. We knew what it would entail.
Let us return one final time to Doctrine and Covenants, section 121. We discussed the concept of consecrated affliction.
This concept is Restoration Scripture's profound answer to the questions left unanswered by the whirlwind.
The whirlwind shows us the majestic scale of God's power. Section 121 shows us the intimate, refining purpose of God's power.
It guarantees what suffering, when endured with integrity, can ultimately become.
It does not just say suffering is a random test to pass. It says suffering is a crucible. It is a forge.
All these things shall give thee experience, and shall be for thy good.
The suffering is actually transmuted into divine character. The ash heap is the very place where exaltation is forged.
This requires us to focus intensely on Job's oath of integrity. We see this oath formalized in chapter 27 and chapter 31.
Job swears an oath. He refuses to abandon what he knows to be true about himself.
And he does this in the total absence of any promised reward.
His friends continually promise him a reward if he will just repent. They promise his wealth will return.
But he refuses to lie about his innocence to get a reward. He insists on his integrity, even if it costs him his relationship with his community and seemingly his relationship with his God.
He kept speaking honestly to God. He spoke through raw rage. He spoke through profound isolation.
He did not give up on the relationship even when the relationship felt utterly hostile.
And when God finally spoke from the storm, the presence itself was enough.
God's presence did not answer the logical questions, but it resolved the relational crisis. The relationship was restored.
The presence of God supersedes the need for the explanation of God.
What does this all mean for you? I want to leave you with a final provocative thought.
It is something for you to mull over in your own study. It builds on everything we have discussed about integrity and testing.
Consider this. Pure integrity, in a cosmic sense, might actually require not knowing the ending.
If we knew the exact mechanism of our reward, our choices would no longer be truly moral. They would be mere economic calculation.
If Job knew for certain he would get double everything back at the end of the trial, his endurance would just be a shrewd investment strategy. It wouldn't be faith.
Exactly. Job proves that true divine trust only exists in the profound absence of immediate evidence.
He had to be stripped of every guarantee to prove that his love for God was not just a love for God's blessings.
We started this deep dive talking about the sheer devastation, the loss of the sheep, the loss of the children, the ash heap.
The raw agony of a man sitting in the ruins of a perfectly ordered life.
We end with the realization that the ash heap was not the failure of the divine plan.
The ash heap was the only place where true, uncalculated integrity could be forged.
The book of Job leaves us with a portrait of a man who learned to stand in the whirlwind.
He learned to accept the mystery of the cosmos simply because he finally heard the voice of the Creator within the storm.
Thank you for joining us as we explored this massive ancient text. We have picked up the pieces of an ancient debate and examined them through the expansive light of the Restoration.
Keep studying. Keep asking the hard questions of the text.
We will see you on the next deep dive.